This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. For the record, I am here, and I am not a cat. Here's what we got for y'all. Tonight, the impeachment trial of former President Trump enters a new phase. We'll break down the latest. Plus, a new documentary series from Newsy explores love in virtual reality. You're gonna wanna see this. But first, here's what you need to know right now. As Trump's impeachment trial entered day 2, both sides focused on the evidence. House impeachment managers who are acting as prosecutors presented previously unreleased security camera footage from the Capitol attack.
We're going to give riot warnings. We're going to try and get compliance, but this is now effectively a riot.
When his mob overran and occupied the Senate and attacked the House and assaulted law enforcement, he watched it on TV like a reality show. He reveled in it. And he did nothing to help us as commander-in-chief. Instead, he served as the inciter-in-chief.
Their argument? That Trump's false claims about the election and his fiery language at a rally near the White House on January 6th provoked the mob of supporters and encouraged them to attack the Capitol.
We fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
The thing is, the arguments heard this week might not make much of a difference when it comes to the actual vote on the article of impeachment. On Monday, just 6 Republican senators joined Democrats in voting to even go forward with the impeachment trial. That was similar to the test vote taken in the Senate last month. A vote to convict Trump in this impeachment will need a supermajority, including 17 Republican votes. The impeachment trial isn't the only legal inquiry the former president is facing today. Georgia prosecutors launched a criminal investigation today into Trump's attempts to overturn the election results there. Remember that leaked phone call made public back in January?
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
During the hour-long call, Trump can be heard repeatedly urging Georgia's Secretary of State to find enough votes to overturn the state's election results after he lost there to President Joe Biden. Prosecutors are now looking into that as evidence in the case. Former prosecutors said the call could violate at least 3 state laws. Georgia is the second state to launch a criminal investigation against the former president. He faces 2 New York State inquiries into whether he misled tax authorities, banks, or business partners. Does it seem like political content has pretty much taken over your news feed? Facebook says it's working on a way to cut down on the politics. The social media giant will use artificial intelligence to detect whether a post is related to politics. Government information on COVID will be exempt from the experiment. Starting this week, Facebook will test the feature with groups of users in Canada, Brazil, and Indonesia. That test will expand to the US in the coming weeks. Lawmakers have called on Facebook to take more aggressive actions to limit how algorithms recommend political content after the Capitol riots on January 6th. Twitter also recently launched a tool to try and crack down on misinformation. The Birdwatch feature will allow users to flag a tweet that might be misleading, including notes to add context as to why. So, people don't think whales aren't real. The feature is currently in the pilot phase. Today is launch day for Newsy's latest documentary series, Shift. It's a series that explores some under-the-radar stories already reshaping our post-pandemic future. And its first episode is a wild one. Newsy's Cody LeGros took a deep dive into the world of virtual reality to tell a truly unconventional love story. We're going to chat with Cody about this in a minute, but first, we've got a short clip from the episode here.
So virtual reality can kind of take away the boxes society puts us in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there we go. So that was my first rhinoplasty. It was pretty painless. Well, that looks like I went to Pandora. The better to hear you with, Donna.
Oh, and there's your skin popping right out. You are so buff.
Oh, wow. Perfect.
All right, so then save. Okay, so you ready for a headset?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Here goes nothing.
There you go. You're on your way. All right, I'll see you there.
Oh, wow. Oh, this is insane. Oh, this is incredible. Oh, this is like being at a club.
We probably need to go to 114 Harvest and meet with our folks there.
Oh my gosh, I'm still stimulated. Like my heart is racing. That was so fun.
Now you understand.
So here to talk to us about that episode is Cody LeGros. Cody, first question right out the gate. What's it like being in VR?
Christian, to be honest with you, I wish I would have took a Dramamine. I mean, there's a lot of motion going on in there. It all feels kind of like a video game, except this is no game. This is real life, real world, real virtual world. It's very fascinating.
What was your takeaway from the technology and how it maybe facilitates some of the interactions we would be having in the real world?
The one thing that is huge when it comes to virtual reality is the concept of identity. And one thing I found the most fascinating about how it could potentially change how we interact with each other is you get to decide what to reveal when. You know, normally in these face-to-face conversations, people can, you know, they come in with their prejudice, their preconceived notions, their visual bias can determine things about you that you necessarily didn't want to share or reveal or be seen. So one direction I think some of the people who are really immersed in VR are saying is this will kind of remove that, you know, influencer vibe we have going right now, especially when it comes to dating, this polished, curated image of ourselves. They say that's going to wash away, and then you'll reveal what you want, when you want, as your avatar.
Maybe one of the most important questions, would you ever or have you ever dated in VR? Would you ever?
Look, I mean, if it's any better than what's going on in the physical world, I mean, I might as well give it a shot. Let's be real, okay? It's hard out here. The technology's getting better. I think I'm gonna wait a little bit. You know, it's beta testing for me right now. I don't know if I want to get involved too soon. Maybe I'm just not ready for the intimacy that actually is involved when it comes to virtual reality dating, because it's incredibly intimate. It feels so real.
Cody, thank you so much for your time. Folks, you can watch the Virtual Love episode of Shift right here, of course, on Newsy after the show. It's snub season, baby, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame said it's time for them to get in on the action. Here's what's trending.
Good girls going bad, the city's filled with them.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame released its list of nominations for this year's class of potential inductees, and you already know they about to piss somebody off with who is or isn't included. Of the 16 nominees, 7 are appearing for the first time. Carole King and Tina Turner were previously inducted as a part of larger acts back in the 90s. If they're inducted, they'll be the second and third female inductees to be honored twice. Stevie Nicks was the first. One of the things that grinds people's gears every year is how many times people are nominated without being inducted within their window of eligibility. Check on the LL Cool J fans today, folks. 6 nominations, and he's been eligible since 2009. Artists become eligible after their first commercial recording turns 25 years old. Inductees will be announced in May, after which the Rock Hall takedowns must cease until they announce a new round of nominees. Fans ain't the only thing missing at Dallas Mavericks games this season. Owner Mark Cuban has directed the team not to play the national anthem before their home games, and it doesn't look like they're going to pick it back up going forward. Cuban explained in a statement the move was a way to respect the voices of people who feel the anthem doesn't represent them. Cuban has been vocal in the past about protecting the rights of players and coaches to kneel during the anthem. The national anthem is a battle song that's been intertwined with patriotism and politics and sports since the 20th century. Professional sports teams like the Chicago Cubs have started and then stopped and then restarted playing the anthem in the past, so this isn't exactly uncharted territory. And of course, in recent history, the anthem has become even more political. It's been seen as a way to protest and direct attention to systemic issues like racial inequality and police brutality. Whatever the reason for the stoppage, it's sure to rub some folks the wrong way. But in a time when sports are providing some sense of much needed escape, it's a change that'll get to the 2 to 3 hour basketball games just a little quicker. Aunt Jemima is headed for retirement, and Pearl Milling Company will soon take her place. PepsiCo and the Quaker Oats company made the announcement this week, making good on their promise from last year to change the syrup brand's aesthetic. Aunt Jemima has been a part of the company for 130 years, but so has Pearl Milling Company, the original flour mill owned by the folks who appropriated the name and likeness of a black woman. The name change was initiated during the season of racial reckoning after the death of George Floyd. Along with dropping Aunt Jemima, Quaker Oats pledged $5 million to support the black community. Rebranded products will hit store shelves in June. That's when those Jemima products will become problematic collector's items, clearly. Let me ask you something. When you're using a dating app, how do you know somebody is who they say they are? How do you know they ain't just trying to get some information out of you? Newsy's Sasha Ingber tells us more about contemporary sexpionage in a digital world, and just in time for Valentine's Day.
We saw it as our patriotic duty to start swiping for our country, of course.
This military officer didn't want to share his identity because of his job, but after the Capitol insurrection, he changed his settings on a dating app to find women who stormed the building. Some information was sent to the FBI, but he wouldn't exactly call himself a Casanova.
I'm a pretty bad honeypot.
Honeypots and honey traps, a melding of two of the world's oldest professions, sex and spying. And gone are the days of tiny pistols and lipsticks and cameras tucked in ties.
Stasi bra cam. Just don't you wish you were wearing this when you recorded an interview with someone?
Quite the getup. Recent years have exposed Russian redheads Anna Chapman and Maria Butina and suspected Chinese spy Christine Fang. Sex and espionage. Why do the two often go hand in hand?
Well, in the words of KGB Major General retired Oleg Kalugin, as long as there are men and women, sex will be involved in the spy wars.
Just a few years ago, the CIA put a book about sexpionage on its recommended reading list.
Well, of course, we're given a counterintelligence course when we first join into the agency. And on day one, the first thing they tell you is you're not that good looking.
That makes dating as an intelligence officer a little more complicated.
And I think a lot of people do have trouble with that. So they start dating somebody, but they're very wary to get too close to them because there is this fear. But what if this, what if this is something that it doesn't present itself to be? What if there's actually something nefarious behind it?
Still, men and women of all ages and sexual orientations continue to fall for the oldest trick in the book. It's been happening for decade upon decade, year upon year, but how has honeypotting evolved?
Maybe you could get them to fall in love with you and share secrets, or maybe you can just spend one night with them, grab their laptop, grab their iPhone, maybe even just clean out the contents of their laptop, with a jump drive.
Today, technology opens new doors. Not only is it common to connect with strangers, especially with people lonely in the pandemic, a senior government official familiar with artificial intelligence technology tells Newsy it would be easy for foreign governments to pair deep-fake profiles with AI, creating more alluring prospects for targets.
The Russians and the Chinese have no problem blackmailing you. If in fact you feel too uncomfortable to come forward and say that you were targeted, that's probably why you were targeted in the first place.
As for our military officer trying to hook January 6th insurrectionists online, he's done fishing. But with Valentine's Day fast approaching, you never know.
If you do find a match here when you're here for an insurrection, that's a great How I Met Your Mother story. I'll tell you that right now.
From Washington, Sasha Ingber, Newsy.
Honeypots, honey traps. I can't wait for my mom to message me about this story. Right now, we've got 2 different COVID vaccines in circulation in the US and one on deck, but vaccine distribution is still a challenge in some places, whether it's vaccine antipathy or distribution not being equitable. Newsy's Kat Sandoval tells us how the Biden administration is working to get the vaccine to communities that are disproportionately affected by the coronavirus.
To ensure equity in vaccine distribution, the White House will provide vaccines directly to 250 community health centers. The announcement comes with a promise to increase supplies to states and tribes by 28% over when President Biden took office.
We are providing a suite of tools to state and local leaders as they work to reach their underserved and hardest hit populations.
Early data shows that communities of color are receiving disproportionately smaller shares of the vaccines.
We can't have large sections of the community going unvaccinated in order to get to that next stage.
In 23 states, Black and Hispanic people are receiving disproportionately low numbers of vaccinations.
You know why some Black people don't trust the vaccine? Things like the Tuskegee experiment.
Vaccine hesitation stems from past inhumane experimentation, and experts say vaccine education, particularly by local health and community leaders, can help answer questions or concerns.
If we have a swell of individuals in underserved communities say, we want the vaccine, we'll figure it out. There are not a Walgreens or a CVS down the street in many of these communities. We know that that's going to be a bottleneck for those individuals in those communities.
To target underserved areas, the administration also plans on providing mobile clinics.
What we need to think about is really making sure that these sites are located in communities where they're easily accessible, where you don't have to have a car to get the vaccine, where you can make a phone appointment instead of having high-speed internet connections.
For Newsy, I'm Kat Sandoval.
With a push to get students back into the classroom, some teachers are learning that in-person education, with the masks and the limited interaction and social distancing, is almost as difficult as being on Zoom. National reporter Chris Conti shares his conversations with some of our country's educators.
To understand what it is like to be a teacher in America right now is to spend a day inside Algonquin Regional High School.
I'm reflecting a lot on my instruction and what I teach.
Jane Bitar and Tom Alera are both English teachers. Between the two of them, they share more than 50 years' experience.
I think it's stressful.
Stressful in the sense that it's so hard to try to do what we want to do for work.
But the hardest lessons this year aren't what students are learning, it's what they're experiencing.
It's not rewarding, maybe because I don't feel that fun, like, connection with the kids as much as usual.
To help keep COVID out of the school, every room now has an air filter. Rooms are cleaned regularly. Masks are mandatory.
Usually I see kids sick and flus and where, everybody's coughing and sneezing. So this has got to be doing something.
Students here are working on a hybrid schedule. Half the class comes in one day, half the next, so that desks can be kept 6 feet apart, which isn't awful.
I appreciate the smaller classes. We're not working with 24 kids in a room, we're working with 12.
But the mask, the lack of interaction, that spontaneous part of education that teachers so love is missing.
I don't see any joy of adolescence. I really don't see it this year. It's so sad.
In-person learning is just different this year. Students can't sit together at lunch. Desks now dot the cafeteria, taking the place of communal tables. Teachers are concerned, not for themselves, but their students.
I'm worried that a little bit of that sort of lack of life and engagement and interaction that has dullified them a little bit, for some kids, I'm worried it's going to stick.
Like so many Americans, it's just hard for these two educators to find motivation some days. All that aside, though, they're grateful to be back in the classroom.
I think we're doing really well. I think we are working really hard, and we know that there is an end in sight.
At least you feel connected and you're part of the world.
And that might be the most important lesson anyone is learning this year. In Northborough, Massachusetts, I'm Chris Conti.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. Sweet Valentine's Day messages are good, but GIFs and Bachelor hot takes are my actual love language. They can detect cancer, low blood sugar, drugs, and bombs. Now researchers believe good boys and good girls can sniff out COVID-19. National reporter Chloe Nordquist has more because, let's face it, you deserve some dog content.
When you get sick with certain infections, when you get sick with certain conditions, your body chemistry changes and you start to give off what are called volatile compounds, which have an odor.
Dr. Amish Adalja works at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security.
Those odors are not something that are really readily apparent to humans, but for example, in dogs, you can notice, you can use that to kind of discriminate between people who have such a condition or not.
And that's exactly what these dogs are doing. They're being placed in airports in different countries and even some basketball games here in the U.S. As businesses look for safe ways to allow customers and fans back in, a growing number of organizations are counting on the animals to identify those who have COVID. The training process for detecting COVID-19 is similar to a process that's been used for years.
Good boy, you're such a smart boy.
Carol Edwards has been training dogs to sniff out low and high blood sugar levels for diabetics for nearly 15 years.
We start out teaching just an alerting action, which is generally a paw shake, a paw on the leg, a paw on the side. And then we take that alerting motion and we connect it to a scent. We keep this refrigerator at 50 degrees.
Using these scent samples, Carol is able to use positive reinforcement training to teach them what to do when they smell a certain scent.
Click and reward. Good boy. Most of these dogs have been living with these scents their entire life. They've always smelled them. We just put a purpose to them. When you smell this, I need you to do that, and it has a good outcome for you. Their noses are phenomenal. They get down to parts per billions. I think the quote that we use is they can smell a teaspoon of sugar in an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
But how accurate can dogs be in detection?
Where we're at is the dogs were upwards of about 94-95%, which is exactly where we want them to be on the saliva and the urine. And we are now moving into what we call the sweat portion of the study. And so this is where we're able to, I guess, demonstrate that we are able to find a COVID-19 positive person at a standoff distance.
Jenna Gadberry and Dr. Patricia Buckley are part of the U.S. Army Edgewood Chemical Biological Center. They've been working with the University of Pennsylvania to train 9 COVID-19 detecting dogs since May. With samples from COVID-positive hospital patients, they've been able to train dogs to detect for future uses in the Army.
We're looking to be able to utilize them in large group settings where we're unable to do things like social distance or have less people there.
Jenna says instead of testing 1,000 people, the dogs could whittle a group down to 30 or 50 who need rapid tests.
We don't see the dog as an end-all. It's another tool in the toolbox.
With COVID-19, it's likely probably going to be the case that there's a backup needed when a dog triggers an alert that somebody might be harboring COVID-19 with a test, an antigen test or a PCR test, at least until this is validated.
Dogs have emotions and can get tired just like any other being, which can impact their ability to be right all the time.
The dog is a living, breathing, emotional creature. They're never going to be 100% of the time.
I'm Chloe Nordquist reporting.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back for more in the Loop tomorrow, same time, same place.